Well, greetings, everyone, and happy Thursday. My name is Caleb Saucer, and I'm coming at you live from St. Louis, Missouri, here at the United Pentecostal Church World Headquarters. And I'm very excited about this conversation that we're going to be having today. I don't know if you're anything like me, but I'll be honest when I say that I did not expect COVID to hang on this long. When this first started, I figured that something would happen, something would give. Surely the country's not going to shut down. Surely churches are not going to have to be displaced. Yet here we are 5-6 months into this, and there's no immediate end in sight. And so we understand that there are many church leaders, many pastors, many staff members who are now, and it's not that they haven't been, but we're having to figure out what we're going to do to continue making an impact in our cities despite the unique situations that we're facing. And so that's really what the purpose of this call is today. Today, I am honored to be joined by Pastor Darrell Johns, who pastors an amazing church, Atlanta West Pentecostal Church there in Lithia Springs, Georgia. He is also the Georgia District Superintendent. And then also Pastor Mark Johnson, who pastors Elkhart Life in Elkhart, Indiana, and is the District Secretary of the Indiana District. Both of these men, while they maybe would sarcastically admit to you that they have all the answers, I think that whenever we got to where the rubber meets the road, they would be honest and say that they probably don't have everything figured out, but they have taken some very intentional steps during this time to ensure that their churches are staying connected and that ministry is still happening to their adults, to their youth, and also to their children. We're also joined by Leanne Alexander, who is actually just a few doors down from me here in the United Pentecostal Church World Headquarters building. She is the associate editor for Pentecostal Publishing House, also a licensed minister, an author, a teacher, and various other hats that she wears. And so we're grateful for her investment in this conversation today. Really, just to set this up, a couple quick housekeeping things. If you're watching on your computer, over to the right-hand side, you'll see a little bit of a portal type thing where there's a chat. Feel free to engage in the conversation today. So if there's something that you feel like you want to share, if there's something you've been doing that maybe we haven't suggested, throw it in the comments. If you have a question, feel free to ask those questions. I can't promise we're going to get to all of them, but if we've got some extra time, we will do our best to get to some of those questions. In fact, there's a little circle when you make a comment next to that comment in that chat feature. If you click that circle, it will put up a red Q that flags it as a question for us. So when we go back through these, we can easily identify what are questions and what are just comments. So you can click that Q, we can go back and we can hopefully cover some of these questions. Our goal today is really just to facilitate a conversation. And so as quickly as I can, I am going to get out of the way. And we want to kick things off by going to Brother Johns. Brother Johns, the question that I would ask you, and I'll also ask Brother Johnson immediately after you give your answer, is number one, how has COVID affected your church, Atlanta West? How have you guys been impacted by COVID? But then what are some things that you have been doing intentionally to keep the adults of your church connected and still pursue teaching and discipling those adults during this season?
Did you say that COVID's affected some churches?
You know, maybe it hasn't in Atlanta, but I just had to assume.
So I am, no, it deeply, of course. And so a little background I'd like to give before I make comments about what we're trying to do. Before COVID, our church is not a small church. I wouldn't consider it a huge church, but it's a relatively large church, and we have good technology and a good team. But as we're talking today, you know, because of my involvement with other churches, I'm keenly aware that a lot of our churches don't have the resources that we might in our church or some other churches do. So we have daughter churches, NAM churches that have started from our church and in our district. And I've watched as so many people have become extremely creative. And I wanted to assure each of you that the most powerful thing you have is a relationship with the people that you lead. If you're a pastor, work on a pastoral team, or if you're a volunteer in a local church, those relationships are the most powerful thing you have. None of us can probably compete with mega churches and the technology. We should do our best, but on our best day, it's not going to be, you know, what some of those churches could do. So please continue to focus on those relationships. But from March 22nd till May 31st, we had online only church. And since then, we had in-person services by registration only. So we've had our people answer questions and register for services. And we have a limited seating in each of our services to allow for social distancing and to try to make sure that we keep our people safe. And, you know, I say so far so good, but we still monitor it continually. We have 2 mirror image services on Sunday, which we've had for a while. But with COVID, our average attendance from what things were as of March 8 till now has decreased our in-person service by 64%. So we can only have 64% of our people in service on any given Sunday. So that means regardless of what we try to do in the house when we're having church, we need to be very aware that a lot of our people, 64%, let's say, are not in church. So that online audience becomes extremely important to us and how we minister to them. So I wanted to mention that our giving has remained strong, except for general tithing. Our missions giving actually has gone up. Our tithing has gone up. But some things are down, and we monitor it all the time. What are we doing to try to connect to our church in this season? We're producing weekly devotionals and sometimes more frequently for our church. This past Monday, we released devotion number 28. So we've had 28 devotions that we've released since the beginning of this. We divided our church into among our team members in an Excel spreadsheet, and we've been trying to stay in touch with our church members in a personal way. We've also asked all of our life group leaders, and these would be leaders over age groups segmented. We try to slice the church in different ways. So this would be more by age. And we've asked them to stay in touch. We have a Spotify list for songs that we're singing at church. We created an email address called prayer@awpc.org so people can mail in prayer requests on a weekly basis. So today that list will be updated and sent to our church family so people can pray for contemporary needs of people in our church. We also have a church Facebook page, a private Atlanta West Facebook page, and people can do updates, fun activities, share encouraging words. And this will apply to some of my other answers, but we have private Facebook group pages for our elders. So it's in our church, it's Joy Group, Prime Timers, Young Family - Crowd, Singles, and then our homeless ministry actually has their own page. So we were having really good success with small groups, but we're not able to meet now. And so we're asking those leaders of their last semester to try to stay in touch. One last thing, and my other answers, as I told you, will be a little bit shorter. But this past Sunday, we received our Sheaves for Christ sacrificial offering, which, by the way, as a lover of Sheaves for Christ, I would encourage you to make sure that you don't miss these important ministry offerings. But we realize we have a lot of people not in church. So what are we going to do? So I'm just giving you an example of what we've tried to do differently to try to connect to our people. So, you know, we send a commitment card in the mail with the QR code. We send an email on Sunday morning with links to give and links to commit. We analyzed how many people were not in church. We compared the commitments this year to last year. Yesterday, we sent 168 first-class letters with envelopes stamped and addressed so people can mail their offerings back to our church. And that was sent to our 2 older groups in our church. But my point in all of that is to say, I think you have to be flexible and fluid and make sure that you just don't do the same thing the same way. For all the things that we haven't done, we've tried to really listen and watch and stay in touch. So those are just some of the things we've tried to do. But every day you feel like you need to do a whole lot more. We've tried to be prayerful, stay in touch with the Lord, and make sure that we listen to his voice.
Very, very good. So much good content there to unpack. I hope that you're taking notes as these gentlemen speak today. Brother Johnson, same question to you. How has your church been impacted by COVID, number one? But then what are some things that you're doing specifically to minister and connect to the adults that are in your church during this time?
Well, we did some of the same things Brother John's did. We went from relatively full auditorium to nobody, and we did that until the end of May. We started back very, very slowly at the end of May. We asked none of our elders, nobody above 60, to come to church for a period of time. Finally, in June, we opened it back up, And still, I have some elders that haven't been to church yet. So we're running 150, 160 in attendance on a Sunday, and we went down to about 90 and worked our way back up to about 135 at this current moment. But we have several families that we still haven't seen, and they're waiting for some day in the future. So we tried to leverage technology, some of which we didn't really know how to do or weren't doing very well at the beginning of this. And we tried to learn and grow and develop. Our volunteers had to really step up some of their skills. Like Brother John's, we wanted to reach farther than our limits. And I'm kind of a counterpoint to Brother John's. His church is a little bit larger, a little more resources, a little more staff. So we tried to do a lot of the things that he's doing, and we had to use technology to extend our reach. One of the ideas was we wanted to package what we were already doing and make it available in a variety of ways. I'll talk about that in a minute. So we also tried to communicate small inside the church. So we weren't communicating everything to everybody, but we wanted to communicate to those people who were interested, who was interested in what our youth group was doing and times and schedules and what our children's ministry was doing in times and schedules. We also had a lively deaf community in our church, which really was very, very problematic because our live stream didn't have a deaf interpreter. So we had to develop picture-in-picture to be able to have our deaf be able to participate. Although they weren't in church, they were able to participate while they were there. So I apologize, my wife's getting a call. Sorry about that. So that really helped us. We really had to work on our technology, but we're very thankful. Eli Lilly, a pharmaceutical company in Indianapolis, their original owners wanted to fund churches. And so they developed a organization called Center for Congregations. And when all of this hit, they realized churches were, some of them struggling to try and communicate. So they offered $5,000 grants for Indiana churches, and only Indiana churches, sorry for everybody who's in other states, to fund religious digital communication. And they used a very, very broad idea. You could buy mics and sound systems or video systems or whatever you would use to communicate outside your church into the community, and they funded it. And there are almost no strings attached. When I found out about it, I communicated that to the Indiana district, and we had over 50 churches receive $5,000, $250,000 in the middle of COVID. Was granted to us for free. So many of the pastors were able to take advantage of it and add better quality cameras, better quality mics, use it for training. We personally use it to do some training for our staff and bring in a professional and polish up some of the work that we had already been doing, but we weren't getting the results that we wanted. So we were able to do that. So I would advocate anyone to be open, be connected into the greater community, the greater Christian community, which enabled us to have that relationship. Our personal church and several churches in Indiana had received other grants over the years. So we knew the organization, we knew their availability, we knew their commitment. No church got turned down. Every church that applied received up to $5,000. You could go for any money less than that, but everybody received that. But money is really not the key. Brother John's mentioned it. Ingenuity really helps. During this, we're not the only ones impacted. Everybody's been impacted. So Good Morning America had to put their staff from their homes. And so Al Roker actually did his segment for a period of time off of an iPhone. Now, he had better quality lighting, he had a good quality microphone, but his actual video unit was an iPhone. So you can do a great deal with what's already in your pocket today and don't have to have a $5,000 grant, at least for some interactive communication. So we developed a 10-minute daily video Bible study from April to June to try to keep a positive message going out to everybody in our church. We did it. It was called Encouraging Word. And so I had some of my ministers in our church give an encouraging word. I invited some of the speakers, some of the preachers that had left our church and gone and started churches or were involved and engaged in ministry elsewhere. And they recorded and sent in, and we passed on to our congregation. So we streamed those to Facebook, YouTube. We made a audible podcast out of it, trying to take advantage of the time that we spent and making it available in multiple locations. So we recorded also some COVID public service announcements that were posted in a very large Christian radio station in our area. So made those widely available, which kind of helped us raise our image in the community. My wife and the ladies of our church did some home Bible studies. They did caroling, and we did distanced home Bible studies, which is kind of interesting. They went caroling on a Saturday. They didn't sing Christmas carols, but they went to our elders' homes, and her and another lady and just knocked on the door and sang songs and just spent a Saturday visiting our people and staying 6 feet away out on the porch, but just trying to connect with families. Not every effort, I would say, was a success either. On our Easter Sunday, we had to pre-record our services on Saturday, and then we'd play them as if they were live on Sunday. So Easter, we were planning to do communion. We delivered communion to every home so they could join us on Sunday, but we had to do communion on Saturday. So when we recorded the service, we had audio issues and then video issues. And so we had to record it, and then we had to record it again, and then we had to record it again the third time. So I had three sets of communion on Saturday. It took us from 8:30 in the morning till 8 o'clock at night to get our Easter Sunday. Now, if we'd have been live streaming, and we're in a particular area that we don't get really great internet at times in our church, and we were having some difficulty during that time. Everything's improved, and we're actually investing in improvement in the next few weeks, again, upping our game. But at that time, it was problematic. So I had 3 times of communion. All of my team that was there, my tech team, they would all come down from their cameras and from the audio equipment, and they'd stand around me. So we would do communion together. So they did communion 3 times as well. So we were pretty holy by the end of Saturday night, and by the time we sat at home Sunday for Easter, my family and I did communion again. So 4 times in a weekend, we celebrated communion. So not everything worked, but some things worked really well. We also, in May, began to feel a need to do more. Some of my friends did online revivals, and they invited preachers to preach a sermon. And one did Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday with a different speaker each night and streamed it for the congregation. They pre-recorded their service at a distance and sent it in, and then they streamed that service. So I thought of some of our music ministries, and I reached out to several and said, I'd like to do concerts. Would you record a concert? And here's the way I'd like you to do it. Record a intro, and then save that separately, and then record a concert. And then we'll advertise this. We'll communicate to your audience that this is available, and you could create a bumper for every church and just do one concert. And so that one effort could be multiplied over and over again. And it was a blessing to our church to hear from some of their favorite singers. And we were a blessing. We sent them an offering, and they didn't have to travel. And then that work that they did was leveraged to benefit other churches. So there's several ways that we tried to use to communicate to our congregation in a very, very specific group spiritual manner. We announced a concert at 7 o'clock on Thursday night. Let's all join in and worship at this concert. So our offerings, we switched over last year to giving online, and a lot of our younger people have been able to do that. Some of our older, like Brother John's, we've sent envelopes and they've sent their offerings in. But our web giving has really helped us, and our giving has not actually declined, but increased during this time because they see that we're doing a lot of investment, leveraging our technology. So we've got a lot of help from our congregation. I'm very, very thankful for that.
I love it. I love this one comment. Brother Hudson said, I hope you were using grape juice for all those communions. Otherwise, these might have been drunk, as you'd suppose. So what great content there. I do want to go to Leanne, and on this subject of adults, we're going to move to youth, and we're also going to talk about children. But on the subject of adults, I know the Pentecostal Publishing House has tried to do some intentional things to provide resources to minister during this time. Why don't you speak very briefly just about some of the things we're encouraging churches to do and the resources we're providing to help them do so?
Thank you, Brother Saucer. It's an honor to be part today. And by virtue of working here at UPCI World Headquarters, I'm privileged to get to see a lot of churches in action, and we give honor to everyone for all of the efforts to persevere during this difficult time. We also have occasion to look at research out there. One of the things I wanted to start by mentioning is that Christianity Today has an article out about 2 weeks ago, and they're hypothesizing, they have a study they're citing that suggests as churches try to have service online, that only about a third of the typical church membership is really getting involved in the online service, tuning in and watching. I hope our numbers are different for a lot of reasons. Now, Christianity Today goes on to hypothesize that the reasoning they assume is because there's a drop in the fellowship with the one-way watch an online service, but you're not able to interact. That's what they're suggesting might be the reason behind that. And there's not that community that you get in church. We would probably call that word fellowship, where you can walk around before and after service and talk and connect with leaders and fellow members. Now, I want to give a disclaimer. I believe because of our apostolic and biblical standpoint, we prioritize the pulpit and the altar. So I would suggest that our perspective as apostolics would be a little different than that evangelical perspective, that their answer is, well, we need to really push on the community side. We need to find ways to offer community. So I think we have a different starting point, but if there's anything that we can harvest from that, if we do believe there is a value to that community or that fellowship aspect of church, then I think we have to do several things. We've got to continue, of course, to feed flocks spiritually, but then try to find those methods that we can encourage community and fellowship as well. So one of the things I just want to mention that we've heard from churches that's working well right now is small groups. And so I know Brother Johnson mentioned things that have helped in all of these fronts: spiritual nourishment, that community aspect. And so I just want to echo the value of small groups and the at-home connections. So typically small groups, of course, that's nothing new. It's been around for a long time, but typically that trends one of three directions. Maybe it's a missional small group where a group just gets together to serve a certain area. Maybe it's an outreach team that comes together, or a group that comes together for the purpose of taking care of special needs within the congregation. But then another way that small groups would function would be a teaching small group. So because maybe a church realizes lecture format is not working, a church may start small groups to do Bible teaching. And then, of course, a third way that has really gained some popularity the last 3 to 5 years would be small groups based around that community aspect we were just talking about, that social interaction, the group that quilts together, gets together, the group that has an interest in fishing, get together. And so what I think right now we might want to think about small groups, we're always deciding where on that spectrum are we and what's the purpose of a small group. If we can find a way to leverage a little this and that with these groups, and if we can incorporate that teaching to continue that spiritual nourishment, we know that need doesn't stop, no matter if we can come to the church building or not. If we can find a way to combine that teaching, that spiritual element, with that very needed community element right now, I think small groups may be a way to get at, again, if there's any value from what this article and what this research is suggesting, and that we've got to work on that community side as well as that spiritual side, we can push that together a bit with small groups. So I would reference some past webinars we've done like this one from PPH on small group ministry. We've got a wonderful group that's given some practical suggestions and even talked in more detail about this philosophy of small groups that I would encourage you to check out on the Pentecostal Publishing YouTube channel. Very good resources in there about small groups. I would also mention that the Discipleship Project curriculum from PPH has built into it, incorporated complimentary leader guides for small groups and participant guides for small groups. So that'd be a great resource if you've never done small groups or you just need to kick them off with some fresh energy and direction. We've got some resources there that will make it very easy to lead a small group. And then the last thing I'll mention briefly is that you asked about resources from PPH. We also started a free podcast amid this pandemic. I don't know how long we've been going with it now, but several weeks, few months now. It's called God's Word for Life. And it's trying to help with that at-home Bible study. And so, of course, there's so much pressure on church staff and, how many videos can you crank out a week? But our goal is to help provide some tools from Pentecostal Publishing House that you can put in the hands of your churches. And so you're not having to create everything from scratch every week. And so this podcast for adults, just a way to dig into God's Word in a free, easily accessible format. Because, of course, we're going to have to, if there's an opportunity in COVID, maybe it's that we really have to push and encourage as much as we can individuals and not just depend on the church building for their spiritual nourishment, but whatever we can do to facilitate that at-home, everyday discipleship. And so we hope between the small group side that's intentional from the church, and then again, maybe resources like this podcast for at-home use, hopefully that will get at both that spiritual side and that social side.
Yeah, very, very good. Couple web addresses I would just throw out for those who are watching. If you're looking for small group resources, pentecostalpublishing.com has multiple small group kits that you can take to facilitate small groups, but also discipleshipcentral.com is another resource that you can leverage in order to have resources to be able to minister to those or in that small group kind of format. So we're going to switch gears here, and I'm going to kick back to you, Brother Johnson, very quickly. And we want to talk now about our youth, and then we're also going to talk about our children, but specifically on youth. I know if as much as adults are feeling the pressure of isolation, the effects of isolation, I have to imagine that our young people who thrive on socializing and being connected, that they are probably one of the most impacted demographics during this COVID season. So the church has to be intentional about connecting them and continuing that teaching ministry with our youth. What are some things that your local church has done specifically for the young people during this time?
Well, you're exactly right. They lost their friendships at school and their friendships at church, and that's very, very difficult. So our youth group started with Zoom meetings. We still wanted to have classes. We still wanted to connect with them. So they've developed some Zoom games and fun activities that they've done, trying to keep it interactive and not just educational, but relational. So they work to create a sense of community at a distance. Then as we moved into May, some of our larger venues, grocery stores had restaurants, open spaces that they could gather and be socially distanced in a big space, not a small classroom. So they started gathering on Friday nights. Once a week, they would do a Friday night of a Bible study or a group meeting, and they would come to church, and our group would come in the auditorium, which was definitely socially distanced for our youth group, and they would pray on a Friday night. So they did some different activities that they could do socially distanced and still maintain their relationship. We tried to communicate not just with the young people, but with their parents as well. So our youth pastor is making them aware in case their kids can get distracted or discouraged or whatever emotional state that they're in that would prevent them from participating. We're communicating to our parents so they're aware. And everything we do, we're trying to keep parents and the kids connected with information. So again, our small group communication effort has really helped us during this time where we're ministering to our youth.
Very, very good. Brother John, same question related to young people. What exactly has Atlanta West been doing to minister to them?
I'll share a few ideas. I wanted to just stop and thank Pentecostal Publishing House, UPCI, for being so responsive and nimble in this time when things have changed so much. While we're talking about what our local churches have done to try to respond and minister to our people, I really appreciate what all you have done to respond to our churches and provide resources to our churches, regardless of the size of a church. It's just hard to generate enough content and material to help everyone every week. So thank you both, and Dr. Johnson, Brother Bernard, everyone who has worked so hard. With our young people, we've had a youth ministry since I came 25 years ago. First staff member I added was youth pastor. So it's very important to me, and I was very concerned about this vulnerable group. And everything Brother Johnson said, they lost peers, at school, and then they lost youth group. So for the first 7 weeks, we had a youth sermon recorded from March 27 to May 15, and then added weekly Zoom meetings, and that seemed to be a little more effective. 1-hour Zoom calls, and they involved devotions for staff. Some students gave devotions, games, and fellowship. And then on May 12, we stopped doing the sermons online. It seemed like the students were not engaging with the online sermon. Brother Johnson talked about some things that don't work, but you don't just keep doing something that's not working. I know sometimes you do the right thing until it works, but sometimes you realize you need to change. So we put the youth sermon, our youth pastor, Brother Joel, put the youth message in the Zoom meeting, and it was a 1-hour meeting, middle school and high school. But then we realized that the middle schoolers and high schoolers weren't enjoying interacting. So then we split and started having every other week, shortened the Zoom meeting when school is starting back up to 30 minutes, and trying to do the same thing with middle school 1 week and then high schoolers in the next week. Our youth group is divided into small groups like our church is, with staff members, volunteer staff members who work with them. So we have our youth staff communicating with our students. We've also done that same thing for all of our hyphen groups. So they have weekly and sometimes bi-weekly Zoom meetings with all of our hyphen related age groups. A lot of our students are involved in ministries, and now those ministries aren't so active, mainly children's ministries. So we're trying to find ways to reconnect them. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. So basically online, churches do different things. So at our church right now, midweek, Wednesday night Bible study is online only. No one's in the house except for support staff. And then Wednesday, we have limited seating. We can seat with social distancing 160 people, and our registration the past few weeks has been full. I will note that we have quite a few no-shows. I don't know why. Every week, some people register and then they don't come. So we're continually working on that. But I said all that to say we have not had in-person meetings for these, life groups or youth group or children, and that's a concern to me. But anyway, we're trying to find a way to redirect our students.
I think something you said there is, in my mind, very crucial, having worked in youth ministry for a number of years, knowing their attention spans and the fact that they are overwhelmed with media. To get them to just watch a service is probably a difficult proposition. I would say the same probably for adults. We hope that we're having that participation, but I think internally we probably know that it's not as high as we would like for it to be. But converting to that Zoom, that small group, that discussion model, to be able to engage them. I do see a comment here. They're saying they're having some difficulty. The parents want something for the youth, and so they've tried to do youth services on Zoom, and they're having some difficulty getting the young people to actually engage in those calls. I think that's the age-old question, is many times parents want something for the young people may not necessarily want for themselves, and that's where that initial comment that Brother John's made about relationships, that comes into key with building those relationships with those young people, texting them throughout the week, engaging them, trying to make that one-on-one conversation and connection throughout the week, or even getting them involved in the Zoom call. So if you've got a couple young people who have been absent, who typically wouldn't be absent in a physical service, invite them to share a small devotion or to give a quick word or something that would pull them back in, finding a way to engage them. So I know there's difficulties with all of these things, but I think that's a very valuable piece of information. Switching gears now to children's ministry, and Brother John's, by nature of following Atlanta West on social media, I get on a couple times a week and a video pops up, and I've seen my good friend Brother DJ Hill at times dressed like a pirate, and he is going to town engaging the children in video. And so I know you guys have made an intentional effort. We did have a question related specifically to Sunday school. What are we doing about Sunday school? This is the opportunity. Let's talk a little bit about that. What has your church been doing related to ministering to children, replacing Sunday school during this time?
All right. And I want to just go back 1 second to acknowledge that our Zoom participation with our students in the youth group has been a little lower. We've tried to engage them. So I just want to acknowledge, I guess misery loves company. So whoever made that comment, I just want to tell you that we're trying to work to engage them. And because a pastoral role, I know we're not all pastors, but we all have a pastoral heart for our people. So we're always trying to reach lost sheep, always trying to reach lost people and are disconnected strays. And that is a concern. So to our children. So we've recorded weekly children devotionals. We have used Pentecostal Publishing House devotionals. We have given children's evangelist offerings and used some of their devotionals. Our Sunday school teachers, I'm meeting with their classes online. We have some grandchildren, 4 that are in our local church. But so Lincoln and Zara love their Sunday school teacher engaging with them. Our Sunday school teachers have sent personal cards to the houses of their kids. And I know my grandkids, our kids, really love getting that personal card in the mail. It's a big deal. So we've used all those devotionals, as I mentioned, the personal cards with stickers in the mail to our kids, something that they could get excited about to connect them to the church. And then we're sending a back to school packet this next week that will have an academic calendar, a pencil pouch, pencils, bookmarks, stickers, markers, just some things that will let our kids know that we're still thinking about them. I know my grandson in Mississippi got some personal things from his Sunday school teacher. And just to let you know that the feedback from the kids is that it probably, more than a teenager, it meant a whole lot to those kids. One thing that I know that Sister Alexander and PPH is working on, we're trying to now, the next thing is to do some how-to videos for our parents to keep them connected. Before I taught my Bible study last night, I talked to our parents about how to stay connected. A couple of weeks ago in my message, I preached from Psalm 100, and I just threw out, why don't you print Psalm 100 out? Put it in a place where you'll remember it. And a grandmother in my church sent me a couple pictures. She was at her grandkids' house, and they had Psalm 100 printed, and it was taped above their school work desk. And, you know, sometimes in ministry, you don't get a lot of feedback, and you don't know, as a friend of mine preached years ago, where do sermons go? What is the effect of that? And I cannot tell you how much it meant to me to see Psalm 100 taped to those kids' desk, that they were actually listening. This was an adult sermon, not a youth sermon. And my parents were doing something to make it work in their home. So don't underestimate the power of God's word and every way you can connect. But those are some of the things we're doing.
Very, very good. Brother Johnson, same question. What has Elkhart Life done to minister to children during this time?
I want to start with what Brother John started with a moment ago and say thanks to the United Pentecostal Church, Leanne, and the team at the publishing house. I actually had to email Brother Johnston and said, hey, can we not get some video work? We were trying to figure out how to minister to our kids. And he said, Brother Johnson, just hold your horses. And just a short time later, y'all came out with the video Sunday school every Saturday. I was very excited. I sent that to the district, all the pastors in the district. If they didn't get it from headquarters, I wanted to make sure they heard that it was available. and it would be a great way to minister to their kids. And our church really valued that and responded to that video. And we had actually brought on to our team the Borlicks, Bruce and Jamie Borlick, who are children's evangelists, and they're generally gone all year. And now they're gone, not at all. So we brought them on staff to be a benefit to them. And they've been just an amazing benefit to us. They've created some church videos. They travel all year doing children's ministry services. And so some of their churches have asked them, would you please do something? And they were a little hesitant at first, but we began to video full services that they would do in a church and do children's revivals via video. So we began to do that and then do it for our church. So they did ministry on video. So we used both what headquarters was doing on Saturday and then what they did for our Sunday services for the first couple of months. And then we've started back to church. We haven't started back for children's ministry either. We're likely going to start in a couple of weeks doing a vacation Bible school on Sunday and doing some of it outside and putting up tents and some of those things so we can socially distance, keep a big open area to keep the kids from being confined. So we're doing that after Labor Day. But we also have camp in Indiana, like all the other states had to cancel their camp. So in late June, we decided to have a camp for 8 9-year-olds and a camp for 10 11-year-olds. And it was really a 28-hour event. We socially distanced. We kept kids overnight in rooms. We'd put 5 or 6 kids in a room, taped off the floor. You have to stay in this taped off area, and 6 feet over was another taped off area. And we had a great time. The kids had a marvelous time. And now they had a summer camp experience that was a very, very short, but very, very fun event for our kids. Our congregation created Facebook groups for our kids, for our classes. I taught our teachers, asked our teachers to teach via cell phone and record a class and upload it to our group so it was available in that one location. They taught the material from headquarters and taught their lessons, but they taught it in an interactive way on the front porch or out in the backyard or some kind of a fun way. And I watched a few of them over the course of those weeks, and they would call out the names of the kids. Good to see you, Tommy. Good to see you, Frank. Hi, Bobby. I like the shirt you're wearing. And so it was really interactive. Some of the parents videoed their kids watching church, both headquarters and our services, and they were mesmerized. They were enchanted by that interactivity and being able to see their Sunday school teacher, like Brother John mentioned. So we sent headquarters materials home to students and had them do that material every week with their parents. So having all of that has really been a huge benefit. Some of the teachers actually did Zoom classes so they could be interactive. We started our what we call our Elkhart Life Kids on Wednesday night a couple of weeks ago. So I think Caleb has a couple, Brother Saucer has a couple of photos that put up in the books. So they created Jeeps. They taped off where kids could sit, and they asked the kids, if you get out of your box, you're going to have to go to your parents. They created these tents in the same vein inside that box, and the kids sat in there. There's a sleeping bag and a rock. Jesus had a rock for a pillow. And so they had a very interactive Jesus adventure over the past 4 weeks, and they're going to be doing it 4 weeks further. This Wednesday night was Jesus in the boat. So you see a little boats that they had there. Just a way for kids to participate, enjoy. We have 25, 30 kids, got an area we open up and expand, but they had a little temporary wall built, a little frilly things hanging down from the ceiling to create a space without completely closing it off. And it's a big volume space. So we've had no COVID issues. We've tried to maintain the distance. The teachers wore face shields, and some of them wore masks and face shields. So we tried to be very, very cautious and follow the rules. I would say, I don't know where all of this COVID stuff is leading, but at one point I was an aimer in Hong Kong and was involved in carrying Bibles across into China. And it's actually illegal to do that in China, but the gospel finds a way. So as Brother John just said, it's really been very interactive and very fluid, but we've just been trying to find a way. We've had our own meetings, our own volunteer meetings. We'll talk about that in a few minutes, I guess, trying to find a way to do ministry in whatever capabilities that we had in-house.
I love it. Now, we have about 15 more minutes on this call. So many creative ideas there. And I would say to those who are watching, know there's been a lot of content, a lot of information that both of these gentlemen are throwing out. They have so kindly agreed to send us their notes after this call. You will be receiving a post-event email that will allow you to rewatch this webinar, number one. So if you have team members, staff members you want to share it with, absolutely, you can feel free to do that. But also we will send their notes as well so that you have a printout of some of these things that they're discussing. Leanne, knowing we're a little bit limited on time and have two more questions I'd like to get to, I do want you to quickly talk about a new resource that the Pentecostal Publishing House has put out to help equip churches, yes, but really more specifically to bring discipleship from a church level down to a family level, and then maybe some of the other things that we're looking to do in the future to continue resourcing the church during COVID.
Absolutely. I love that phrase, find a way. And I hope this has been encouraging. Incredible ideas. Our motto is everybody can do something. And so we've kind of this urban legend over here in the office. Somebody early on during COVID ran across this video on social media of, I have to be careful, but it was a lady older than me by seemingly some years. So we said an elder who had taken her iPhone, like has been mentioned, and read the Sunday school lesson to the iPhone for the kids. And that just really lit a fire under us in-house. And we said, you know what, if she can do that, all of us can do something. So, of course, I think Saturday will be I guess it's week 27 or week 28 of the online Sunday school videos that we've been doing that's been referenced previously. And so we appreciate our staff working hard. Thank you for your kind words. The accolades go to the whole team. But we're concluding that with August, and part of the reason for that is we know really the local church is best going to minister to those in its care because you have built those relationships that Brother John's referenced earlier. We did release last evening a video that trains teachers and volunteers on how to create your own online Sunday school videos to do what these churches have already shared they're doing. So there's videos to teach the Sunday school lesson if you can't meet in the building. The other thing I saw just last weekend, I loved it. Saw a video of a Sunday school teacher who I guess had a small church and maybe wasn't comfortable with video or maybe just had the ability to do this. I guess she had a small group of students in her care. So she scheduled time with the parents, showed up on the lawn and taught the Sunday school lesson to the kids on the front porch or at the doorstep. So everybody can do something, find a way. I love that, Brother Johnson. And then the last thing I'll mention is the Word of Flame Home Guide, we've called it. I think Brother Johnson mentioned using something like this, maybe this tool they're using. But this is a way to equip parents to take an active role in the discipleship of their children within the home. And I noticed that Lila Hamel mentioned that they are sending an email lesson to parents every week. And I know Brother Johnson mentioned sending that curriculum out. For the first time, I think, in our history, we are selling digital license of the curriculum. So if you can't meet in the building and use the tear-off activity papers for the kids in the works, you can purchase the digital curriculum, digital license, and email that out, whatever you need to do with it. Do what you need to do, but this Word of Flame Home Guide specifically is a digital tool you can create and make available to the parents of your churches. And what it is, it's very simple. It's just 2 questions every day to give parents an intentional way to start a spiritual conversation. Just 2 questions. We want to be gracious, and we know guilting parents into something is probably not going to work, but this is a simple, gracious way to put a tool in parents' hands that will equip them to lead that spiritual conversation in the home.
Very, very good. So shifting again, one last time. I have two more questions on my list. Hopefully we can get to them both. But Brother Johnson, I want to come back to you. We want to talk specifically about our volunteers. We know the pressure that pastors and church leaders have been facing, and it's very, very real. But for our volunteers, we understand church cannot happen without a team of volunteers who show up every week to make this happen. And so in this process of an ever-shifting just target, ever-moving target, and things change every single week, what are some things that we can do to inspire and to motivate our teams, our volunteers, to continue faithfully showing up and serving the church week in and week out, even during these tough times?
Well, I'm very thankful to have a great team of volunteers. Our tech support team has been amazing during this time to answer questions, develop solutions, to really work to accomplish what we've been able to accomplish. So I couldn't say enough good. And their commitment has been a commitment to the kingdom, to do the message of getting the gospel out. And really, it's not about the work. It really is about getting the gospel out. So we typically have about 75% of our church is engaged in some kind of volunteer work. A number of those have a variety of jobs, a variety of responsibilities. So during this time, we've seen a decrease in that number. So we haven't had as many engaged, but those that we have engaged have been super engaged and have really stepped up their game to do what's not normally done. We've had some of our elders, some of our retired individuals become very, very digitally minded in order to meet the goal of spreading the gospel to their community, whoever it is that they're ministering to. So I think that's probably the key thing, is keeping people engaged, is keeping them on target and on message.
Very, very good. Brother John, same question to you, motivating volunteers.
So we also have, I think, a culture of volunteering. It's serving, generous with their time. So what we've tried to do as a leadership team, our pastoral team, is every week assess how we're doing and staying in touch. We have monthly meetings with our 301 leaders that we call 301 leaders. So we've asked them to stay in touch with their teams by text, email, direct messages, phone calls, cards and notes, just to stay in touch with the people who are volunteers, because of volunteers in our children's ministry and youth ministry are not active. We're trying to redirect some of that energy into our COVID protocol teams for check-in, monitoring public spaces, our production teams. I just approved, I think, 20 people to be approved to serve in our production team who are serving other places but not on that team. And I have to say that this is not normal. We have a lot of volunteers in our church that are inactive right now in our choir worship team. So we're trying to find a way to redirect them. But I will just say that it's a concern to me that as people fill in their time with other things, that we don't lose those volunteers. You try to measure as many things as you can, volunteer commitment, giving, and all of that. But I would say trying to redirect them, and then to see them do online Bible studies and to direct people toward personal ministry. We've also been trying to do that as well.
Very, very good. I love that. Redirecting, repurposing those volunteers that are used to showing up and getting their hands dirty week in and week out. I think that's so key. So much good content that has been shared today. And I want to say, before we close this out, and I am going to ask you one more question, but I do want to go ahead and just thank both of you again for your time. Such incredible insight. I know those who have been watching today have no doubt been blessed, hopefully inspired, encouraged, gotten a few ideas that they can stick in their back pocket, bring home, and use to implement in their local church. We know COVID has caught us all off guard. Didn't catch God off guard, but it caught us off guard. And we've done the best that we can. I think I'd be remiss if we didn't take the opportunity to celebrate pastors in churches who have just stepped up to the plate. In this season, so many pastors who never set out to be televangelists. They didn't set out to have their messages broadcast to social media, to be picked apart by whosoever will. But God bless our church leaders and our pastors who have stepped up to the plate, our teachers week in and week out to continue to fulfill the call that God has placed on their life and ministry in their local cities. As we close this out, I want to give both of you a last word. And really, instead of just talking about the negative impact and how we've overcome the negative impact, there's been a lot of negative, and we can be honest about that and not feel bad about it. But I wonder, have there been any positives? Are there any opportunities that have come up because of COVID that we could celebrate today and that we could hold up and say, had it not been for COVID, this may or may not have happened? So, Brother John's kind of last word.
Well, from the beginning of this, blindsided, but as you said, not the Lord. So I really felt a need to dig in prayer, seeking the Lord. And I would have to say that some of the unique messages the Lord gave me early on, that if you would have sat down and tried to think about that, I would have never come up with that. We believe in praying and preaching. So I felt like the Lord really helped me to encourage and strengthen and hold our church together. And as the Lord said, he would make a way in the wilderness and give us rivers in the desert. So I felt like the Lord resourced us with direction and provision while we went through this time, and it strengthened our church. And then I think it taught me to trust the church, that people love the Lord, that the church is stronger than you think it is. And while you may not always get feedback, that God is at work behind enemy lines, behind the scenes to help us. And in the month of August, I felt directed to teach a series and preach on the faithfulness of God. And I think that has strengthened our church. We've expanded our online audience. We've learned a lot of new things that we never would have done. We created a way for non-members to connect, another email, connect@awpc.org, that we would pray with you, we'd safely baptize you. So we've learned to adapt and use limited budgets and limited personnel and time to try to find new things. I would say that we've also learned to have a backup plan. What happens if on Wednesday night the power goes out like we thought it would last week? And so what are we going to tell our online audience and how? So we've learned to do that, to anticipate, because it will happen, and what we're going to do. And finally, it's helped us to not have complacency, not just to do the same old thing the same old way. So I think a great positive thing is made us wake up, not be asleep at the wheel. And we shouldn't get COVID complacency now. So we make sure. This past Sunday, a 9-year-old girl received the Holy Ghost at the end of our online service, and which really encouraged me. Watch church, receive the Holy Ghost. And then last night, I got a picture of our grandkids praying at the end of my Bible study when I wasn't sure I did a very good job, but my kids were praying at home, and made my day, and it encouraged me to just keep on doing your very best.
So good. Somebody just commented and said, I can feel the anointing. And I completely agree. I feel witness of the Holy Ghost at the end of this call, that despite all the negatives, that there are many positives that have come out of this. And we're grateful for that. Brother Johnson, same thing. Oh, looks like we may have just lost Brother Johnson. Since that is the case, what we're going to go ahead and do is close out this webinar. We are always try to be conscious of your time whenever we host these and try to keep them right at an hour. And I'm glad we've been able to do that today. I apologize that we weren't able to get to absolutely every question today. But I do want to once again thank Brother Johns and Brother Johnson for their investment, Sister Alexander for being a part of this call. We hope that you were blessed by this effort and that you receive some valuable content that you can implement in your local church. A reminder, you will receive a follow-up email that will have a replay link to be able to rewatch this webinar. Also, we posted on our Facebook page, the PPH Facebook page, and the Pentecostal Publishing House YouTube channel as well. And we will try our best to share those notes from these two great men with you. We hope that you are blessed. We celebrate all that God is doing, and we celebrate those of you who are stepping up to the plate to continue to fulfill the mission of the church, which is to seek and to save the lost, to disciple and to train, even during these unique times. We pray God blesses you, God brings increase, and if we can ever do anything to serve you, please let us know. Thank you for your time. God bless.
Our honor.